Hi, my name is Tay Hamilton, and this is my 6th year in 4-H and my 2nd year in FFA. I have exhibited at local, state, and national levels, and have been very competitive.
Today's video we will be explaining show preparations, feeding, grooming, showmanship, and equipment to make you successful in the goat show ring. We're going to start with the feeding techniques, the do's and don'ts to make your goat successfully eat. I would always start by feeding a goat a complete textured show feed. That way you'll get maximum conception and consumption out of your goat as you feed. Also, the biggest thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to pile a bunch of feed in the feeders. You want to make sure that you always empty your feeders of what they don't eat prior to feeding the next feeding. That way you know exactly how much those goats are eating at all times and getting the most out of the feed that they can get. Don't try to switch the feed. Once you find a feed that they like, don't switch the feeds. That's a major don't. You will throw the goat off feed, and therefore he won't eat and gain the way you need him to gain to be successful at your county fair. Along with it, I would suggest that you feed your goats in individual pens, or at least keep it to small numbers. That way you can maximize how much they're taking and eating per pen. Also, the biggest thing for daily gain is fresh water. Fresh, clean water is the key to keeping the goats hydrated and healthy as they eat, and you know how much they're drinking. Talking on feeding wise, you want to make sure there's not a set amount of feed that you give an animal. It's just on the animal of how much feed that you give. We try to keep our goats on full feed up to the 70-pound mark, as much as they're eating a day, and then you can start to ration that out as they get bigger and their body condition for that goat and that particular skeleton is found and where its end date and end weight needs to be. The biggest thing that you got to find is the right proper equipment for your show goat needs. So here we're going to kind of go over some of the equipment we use on a daily basis. The biggest thing first and foremost is make sure that your goat is clean. That is the whole key, is you got to make sure the goat's clean before you start using any of these products. First thing that we're going to talk about is blades. For market wethers and market does, you're going to want to use a set of cover coat blades. Lister makes them. They are cover coat. They're used to leave just enough hair where it makes them look smooth and clean, and it doesn't get their hair too short. The next thing that you want to do is you want to have a nice comb on hand to brush the hair and make sure that your leg hair is not getting matted to the goat's legs. Another key thing to keeping hide in very good condition is have a blanket on your goat at all times after being sheared. When you get that goat home in the spring from a sale or wherever you get him from, you want to make sure that he has a good blanket on that's not too big where he's getting caught and hurting his legs, but fits nicely and he can grow into it a little bit, and make sure that he's always clean. You want to make sure that you're always checking under that blanket just to make sure there's no fungus or anything growing underneath. And it keeps the flies down, keeps the skin in good condition, and makes sure that it's actually an insulation for their body temperatures. The last thing that we're going to talk about is halters. Now, people have personal preferences. Around here, we like to use the chain halter that is found. You can get it at the Final Drive Show Supply in Wisner, Nebraska. The chain halter is just a way of getting them broke without having to drag them with a chain. There's another preference that people like to use is a collar or a chain around their neck. But we tend to find it better that you can get them trained better and faster by using the halter, because that's what they're used to as you're trying to move them from location to location. So that's some of the equipment that you'll need. Also, not here pictured, but you would need to find a sheep and goat stand that you can put them up on to shear, and to also do your daily grooming techniques that we'll talk about here shortly. But that's most of the equipment that you will need to have a successful goat project. Video going back to the cover coat blades that we showed you in the equipment portion of the video. You want to take those cover coat blades and put them on a set of Lister clippers or Premier clippers for that fact. And you want to shear everything on the goat, including his head, above his knees, up, and his whole body. You want to leave the knee and hock below in hair. That way it shows natural bone and shape right here. As you show your goat, you'll have the bone and hair that you need for that show ring appearance. The other thing that is a big no-no in this goat showing world is don't leave a pom-pom on the top of your tail. Make sure that you shear that down so that it makes their hip look wider from behind. You want to make sure that before you even start shearing that you have a clean goat. The biggest thing to know that if a goat is dry is to handle his ears. Make sure that his ears are dry. If his ears are dry, then you know that that goat is good and dry all the way through. But start on the ears, dry the body, make sure the goat's completely dry before you go on to shearing the goat. The other part of grooming after you get your goat sheared and daily care at home is about 3 days a week. You want to focus on making sure that that leg hair is in good condition. So what you want to do is you want to soap and water the legs, then go back through with mane and tail conditioner and condition those legs. That way that hair is not matting to the body or the bone and leg of that goat, so that you have a good luscious hair coat when going to get them ready for adhesive or whatever you may do to get your goat ready for the county fair. Next portion, we're going to go over showmanship skills and some of the show ring presence. As you see on this side of the goat, what we're talking about is this is the show side. The right side of that animal is always the show side of that animal. And you always want to keep your animal between you and the judge. That is the biggest thing, is that that judge is always seeing your animal and not you in the middle. So on starting your animal, when you get him home from your sale, you want to make sure to get him chain broke first. So get him halter broke, a collar around his neck, whichever you prefer. And then after you get him broke, you want to start setting him up. And as you can tell here, we have Taya setting up the goat. You want to make sure that those feet are square at all times. You want your back feet even out behind him so it shows the curvature of that hip down to the hock and on down to the ground. You want to make sure that his front feet are wide enough and square enough that it gives that goat a wide enough look from behind, from the front, and over top as you study that goat. The next thing that you always want to focus on showmanship is making sure that you have your eyes on the judge at all times. Now that doesn't mean that to stare off into space and look at the judge and not practice on your animal, but you want to make sure that you have the proper combination of both eye appeal and having your goat set up at the same time. So once you get your goat set, you want to make eye contact, then maybe glance back down at your animal and make sure that that goat's standing square and on all four legs as he's standing there to give the judge the best look of your animal. Now you will have goats, as you can see, that this one, he is just now in the stages of still getting broke. We're in the same thing as you guys right now as far as getting ready for the county fairs in general. And so they're not quite broke all the way yet. But you just want to keep practicing. And what I tell people is you might try to do this for 3 to 5 minutes a day. And if the goat moves, reset it and start over. But that's one of the top showmanship things, is making sure that your goat's square at all times. You have the perfect ring presence. Another thing that I would often recommend is your manners in the show ring. You want to make sure that you're always doing what the judge is asking. You're always acting like you're happy, no matter if you're first or last. You win and you lose both the same. And make sure that when you're setting your goat up, and if you have if you're having problems, just take a deep breath, restart, and make sure that you're doing everything that you've done at home to make sure that your showmanship skills can be the best that they can be. You also, another thing that we've started to see a lot more in the market goats is bracing. And that is where you can see where Taya standing in the front side of that animal, making that goat push into her as hard as she can so that you get that proper muscle expression and feel when that judge comes up and handles the goat. Now also when doing that, if the judge walks to the front of the animal, you want to make sure to get off of that animal and give them a good front view, making sure that that neck is really extended, the feet are set square, and that judge is getting the proper look at the front end of that animal. Another thing on showmanship that you also want to do is the way that you show that animal is the way that you do it all day. Don't just do it for showmanship. You want to make sure to do it through the show, through the grand drive, whatever it may be. You want to make sure that you continue to show that animal how you showed it all day long. Don't just put on a show for the showmanship. You want to make sure to carry that on throughout the day, because some of the shows when showmanships last, the judges have watched you all day and know exactly